we're going to bring some positivity into the MCU. We're going to just give it a nice influx of good vibes and hope and put it out in the universe. We're going to be talking about why you, MCU fans, should be hopeful for the MCU in 2025. Spider-Brand, I'm going to kick it over to you first. Obviously, on the heels of all the announcements and things that we've gotten, we're going to look forward here. Why do you feel hopeful about the MCU? What should people be looking forward to?
It seems like amid all the chaos that we've had of the last couple years and kind of seeing where it's leading to, it seems like we're finally on a nice path of connected projects that, yes, they may be kind of like scrapely kind of connected as of recently. Like we know the Doomsday or Doom wasn't the whole plan this entire time, but they're making it work with what they got. And I like that. And I'm here for the story to be told. Like, the Thunderbolts post credit scene directly ties into everything. Who knows really how they would have tied in Thunderbolts if like Kang was still involved and that aspect was still involved. So it's cool to see that connectivity. And obviously it's just awesome to think about that the next two MCU movies we get is Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, two of their huge IPs that Marvel has, and we've been hollering for the day that we get Fantastic Four in the MCU. And I know we've had Spider-Man in the MCU for a while, but hollering for the day where crossover Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, and it could be upon us within the next 17 months or Secret Wars. I don't know when. We don't know much about Brand New Day, so interesting to see that. But it's very hopeful to think about we can get that crossover, and things are looking up. It's not even including like X-Men 97 or any of the other like side Disney Plus projects that could play a role. I'm not saying X-Men 97 could play a role in the grand scheme of things, but I think that Vision Quest series is one that could low-key play a decent role in the next saga, not next saga, but in the upcoming movies too.
Yeah, and I think a big part of this is, not just for 2025, but we are looking at the MCU moving forward as a whole. So for you, Hero Scroll, what are you feeling about the future of the MCU, and why do you feel optimistic or hopeful about it?
Honestly, it's looking back at everything that they've done in the past 2-ish years that they've been on a roll that I think some people don't want to admit, right? Even as far going, to be honest, going as far back before Deadpool and Wolverine, even where
Yeah.
a lot of what they were putting out was good. Guardians 3 has been a high point, and I think after Guardians 3 is where they kept going. And yeah, there was a couple of projects that for some people were on the lower side of things, echo the Marvels, but I think the Marvels, when you go into it with an open mind, was actually pretty good. It's actually, when you really think about it, an up for the MCU because they took a lot of the things wrong with Captain Marvel and they fixed that situation. It's not for everybody, but it's still there. This year alone, Captain America: Brave New World, really good movie in my opinion. Thunderbolts, awesome movie. And I'm pretty sure with everything else that they're going to offer us for this year, Fantastic Four is going to be great. Not to mention, like SB said, all the Avengers and Spider-Man. But we have all these other Disney Plus shows that we kind of forget about and they kind of go to the wayside just because of how marketing has been. But we're getting that. We're getting Eyes of Wakanda, which people yearn for. Black Panther, anything really. We're getting Marvel Zombies, which is something that for some people is going to really carve its own niche as well. So I don't know. I think overall the MCU is doing a lot of fun things, interesting things, and people are starting to get to the point where they can't deny it too. Where I honestly feel like with Captain America: Brave New World and Thunderbolts, a lot of the complaints were very nitpicky in overall comparison to the reception of the movie. So yeah, overall, I think that's what that trend is going to continue forward.
Yeah. And I think one thing I want to focus on really quickly here is kind of the quality aspect of things. I think one thing that people were kind of waiting for, especially post Secret Invasion, was like this whole higher quality storytelling. We're not going to be oversaturated with things. We're going to focus on some tighter narratives to where it might not need to be connected to the rest of the MCU per se, the main storyline. But the thought here moving forward after Thunderbolts is we're going to get fewer projects, but they're going to be better projects. And I think we've kind of seen that definitely, since Deadpool and Wolverine, where it's kind of been out there in kind of the Marvel ethos. But I'm curious, guys, do you think now with everything that's been going on, and I'll throw it back to you, Hero, first, do you think the fan expectations have really set in for people post Thunderbolts now that we know that a really good quality project might not be the box office hit that we've kind of come to assume any high quality Marvel movie would make?
I think that expectation still needs to be tempered a little bit from people, because I mean, we posted something on our socials this week about having that same exact um conversation, and a lot of people are like, well, they were blaming us for trying to be the negative ones, but in reality, it's like if you listen to the majority of the fandom, people are calling Thunderbolts a flop. People are calling Brave New World a flop, even though Brave New World made significantly more than Thunderbolts. So I think it'll still be there for a little bit, especially depending on whatever comes out, in between everything else. The harder part about it is that since we're only really having 2 films for the MCU before Avengers in Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, I feel like those are going to hit very well, especially with where they're going to be in the summer. And then Spider-Man, it's its own beast. But I think people will kind of hear that expectation come back again, probably rearing its ugly side because of Disney Plus and how there is no really big metric to go off of other than just fan reception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. SB, what about you, man? How are you feeling now? We have a movie that a lot of people painted as kind of the return the form for the MCU, and it didn't again reach that box office metric that a lot of people thought in order to exceed Brave New World. Have you kind of seen, I know you're pretty close and have your ear on the ground to a lot of people in your community and just across communities in general. What's kind of that general consensus for kind of the state of the MCU, if you will? And does that help you kind of think forward in the MCU of, hey, if expectations are lower, things might actually be better?
I've probably I have a friend group for like every different position of the MCU fan base right now. Like I have some friends in my movie going group that they saw Thunderbolts, said it was mid, but then others that I saw it with are like, it's amazing and awesome. And they just nitpicked a lot out of it, the ones that said it was mid. And then I've had friends that think Guardians isn't good, but then like Loki season 2 is like the best thing of all time, which I love Loki season 2, but it's so all over the place with people and everything right now, just because there's so many different projects out there that speak to everybody at a different time when they consume these projects.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is cool, but it definitely sets high expectations up for these movies, because I remember one of my friends going into Thunderbolts, he said that if he didn't like the movie and if the movie was bad, he's done with Marvel and was leaving the group chat. And they say that about every single movie that I take them to see, which is the fun part. But I'm like, when is it actually gonna happen?
Yeah.
So, what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead and finish your thought.
I was gonna say that they have super high expectations, especially Fantastic Four. If people don't like this movie, I think Marvel's really, really in a gutter because they have a whole year to sit with it, and then Spider-Man's got to come in and save the day. So it puts a lot of pressure on Fantastic Four, and a lot of people are still not over the freaking stupid 2005, not stupid, but they're not over the 2005 Fantastic Four, and it's like, that's how it should be. When I'm like, no, it's not
I
how
mean,
Fantastic.
it was pretty stupid.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was. I don't want to say it, but it was.
I mean, when you take
Um,
your big world eater and put him into a cloud, like, yeah, come
that
on.
was
And there's some pretty unforgivable stuff in the first one.
yeah. I mean, that's true, but my point is that that's like a final, like that's like a final straw. If they can't nail Fantastic Four, then how are they going to survive like the 17 months leading up to Doomsday
Yeah.
with the
It's
public's perception?
it's very it's very interesting, right? Because Hunter, what's up, man? Kevin, Marvel Studios trying to course correct to please fans, and also this is about making money. Well, of course it is. It's a studio, so of course they're going to want to make their money, and also they are course correcting for the fans because that is who goes to these. So why wouldn't they? Especially after years of not doing it, they kind of have to win back everybody. They shouldn't have had to do this. They should have course corrected ages ago, but where we're at. But SB, to your point, and I'm kind of curious to see what you think, and maybe Lou, you as well, or anybody else in the chat, because people have these high expectations, right? But I just want to, the thing that I personally struggle with, and I've told you guys this before, is where do these expectations come from? It is the thing that I don't understand and why they get placed into these movies. For example, Captain America Brave New World, people were like, well, if it doesn't connect to the 18 different parts of the MCU, then it sucks. And guess what? It didn't do that, but it never. Why is that the expectations that we put on ourselves for that? You know what I mean? Fantastic Four is different. I think we are expecting it to because of where it was supposed to fall with Avengers Doomsday. I get that. But then also, my big curious thing is that, again, are we having these large expectations only because of that? Or is there something more at play that maybe we're just missing?
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys think.
I got thoughts, SB. I'll
Endgame
give you
Infinity
first
War.
stab.
It's the Endgame Infinity War effect. There are a couple. I've said it a couple episodes that those movies ruined the MCU. Not ruined, but they definitely put such high expectations for everybody that was jumping on the bandwagon and hype train of binging all like 18 movies beforehand, and they got like all of those years of build up in pretty much real time because of streaming and stuff like that. And now that's exactly what they want. They just want the instant connections, just like Infinity War and Endgame, but because they weren't there from the beginning of like Phase 1. And the ones that were there are the ones that usually aren't really as nitpicky or complaining as much because they understand how long it takes to build stuff up.
I think to answer your question, Hero, with these expectations, right? It just seems like, we're 5 years post Endgame essentially, and there's a chance, and why I do think I'm hopeful for the MCU is because I feel like Thunderbolts was almost kind of like that striking the match, right? And you saw some sparks, and you're like, okay, we got a team up, we got interesting characters, we got characters that were a little, more dynamic than some others. We got some fresh looks at certain characters. We got a kind of a revitalization for some existing characters that we didn't think cared. And like, some of those were Disney Plus characters, and it's like all the history that has been kind of laid post Endgame. It felt like this is a small blip, right? Not Thanos snap blip, but like a blip on the radar of like piquing interest for people again. To be like, is Marvel back to meeting where we're at? And we had connections with the movie. And I think Thunderbolts wasn't all the way in, but it opened up a brand new door for people, whereas Brave New World didn't. And I really don't think, and I'm just going to throw this out here, for the most part, I don't think it was a race thing when it comes to Cap. I think a lot of people like Sam Wilson. I think a lot of people said he was the highlight of the movie. The hard part is everyone wants Avengers. And Sam is supposed to be that guy who assembles the Avengers. And when Sam doesn't assemble the Avengers, Sam's movie is a bad movie because we don't have the Avengers still. Now, the Thunderbolts and the new Avengers are not the Avengers. Again, we get that. But with Fantastic Four specifically, there is a chance for them to have a primo team to where you can disconnect from the old movies and be like, this is the new S tier team that's going to come in to help, that we can jump into Doomsday with. And why I say that and what makes me very hopeful about that now in comparison to where we've been is Marvel movies are still fun and enjoyable. It's really hard to say that they're not. I don't know. I mean, even the Marvels for the most part was a really fun, enjoyable theater experience. You could go for 2 hours, forget the world, walk out and be like, I'm back in the mess. However, with Fantastic Four, directed by Matt Shakman, who people loved from WandaVision, you are going to get a movie that probably is going to be fun to watch. It's probably going to be fun to watch again, especially because it's going to give us some new lore, most likely, and how this Fantastic Four is in the MCU. You're probably going to be able to connect with your characters. They're going to have really cool fight scenes. They have very unique power sets. It's going to balance the drama that we've gotten in the trailers with some of the comedy we've also seen in the trailers. Tons of fan service is probably going to be in there. And because it's a new entry into the MCU, it's accessible for all fans. There is no do your homework for the Fantastic Four. There is no go back and watch 2015, go back and watch 07 or whatever it was before. You can walk into this super fresh. And I think it will take the next step or first steps to what Thunderbolts kind of was doing for people. And I think that alone will be a reason for, now box office is separate, but enough that people come out and be like, dang, that's the team. They have the makings still of that can be the team in the MCU. That's who we want to see. And when we ultimately get an Avengers team, it's going to feel like a bonus because the Fantastic Four can feel that good.
And that to that point, that's where the word of mouth goes so strong for a lot of these films, where we can see how much they can carry it by and how far it'll go its next couple weeks. And that does matter ultimately. Yeah. So again, going back to that point of like trying to please the fans, it's like, yeah, that is what they should do, because the fans will be the ones to talk most loud about it. And that's what will ultimately get butts and seats. And maybe it'll be the same people watching it again, but they might bring a couple more people.
Yeah.
And that's how you build a new generation of fans. Yeah. Right? Because even going into the race thing really quick, but not fully, but yeah, there is going to be people who don't want certain characters pushed. But ultimately, the way that I see it is, if they, at least from what it seems like, Disney and Marvel want Anthony Mackie as Cap at the forefront. They're not backing down on that.
Mm-hmm.
They know the pushback that's going to come back. Hopefully, right? Who knows? So as long as they still push him forward, and I think fans see that, and fans are like, yes, that's our Cap for now. Like that's what will make fans happy. Because I know for us here, we want to see him come back.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but again, that's how you make a new generation of fans. Because again, when it comes to Infinity War and Endgame, people who were 10 years old were now 20. And by the time that Doomsday comes around, people who were 20 are going to be 30 with their children, who are now probably 10 years old, which is crazy to think about, watching these films to make a new generation of fans. And these kids will grow up and be like, well, that's my new favorite character. That's who they view as Cap. That's who they view as Spider-Man. Yeah. That's who they view as whoever you want to put.
Yeah.
So, I think all of that is just positive momentum for the MCU. Going down that comic-based route where you throw it out there and you see what lands with people.
Yeah.
Because like people are writing off these movies for really stupid reasons, and just for like, look at what all the hatred that Fantastic Four has just because of Shia LaBeouf, and like that pisses me off. Like, she's literally been a character since like 1968 in the comics, and everyone's like, oh, it's gender swap Silver Surfer, like, kick rocks, get out of here. She's an actual character. Doesn't mean we won't get Norrin Rad, and like we can't be hyped for Norrin Rad in the future and still have that hope that they could still do that whole route, because she's just in a little different universe. But so many people are annoying. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and a lot of these projects, again, the thing is if this quality movement is coming in the projects that are completed or being reshot or redone or whatever it might be now, post strike, post COVID, you're going to have projects that are going to be undeniable. And that's really what phase 3 was. It was undeniable. You can look back on some of the movies and be like, I probably don't want to rewatch that, and they have low rewatchability. But at the time, you were there. So there is this whole kind of momentum. I do feel like it's bubbling, but at the same time, there's going to be a film that's going to have a good combination of ratings plus box office that will come. But the good thing is Thunderbolts had the ratings. So there's the plus. And they have the backing of the studio and Disney to say, hey, this is kind of the start of the quality concept that we have. So moving forward, and understand, just for everyone listening, just because something releases doesn't necessarily mean it falls into that quality bucket. Again, we're going to see Ironheart and people are like, it was made before. It's not up to the same quality. It feels different. It looks different. It's because it is different. It's coming out at a later time, but I'm not saying that it's going to be a bad show by any means. It could be a really good show, and it had actually a really solid trailer. But point is we're getting to kind of fresh, new shows and films. But Kevin, to your point, good films still have to make money at the box office. Again, we're talking about the MCU, right? It's not just like a Mission Impossible. It's not just kind of one of these one-off franchises. This is a global phenomenon that takes the world by storm. And for a lot of people vocalize how they feel by stepping away from the box office, stepping away. The sins of the MCU is something we've talked about a lot on here if you've listened to our other shows. So there is a lot, and you can see even on our social media posts, we had a couple engagements on there of more than a couple of people just being like, it's not worth my time. And then you get that word of mouth. When it comes out on Disney Plus, I'll watch it. So again, it's not like the interest isn't there. We just need a couple shows right now to kind of hold on until we get that next big momentous movie that hit the box office to really put the numbers on screen for people to justify the worth of going to see these films and movies. But that doesn't mean that the quality isn't there. In hindsight, they'll age well. But there is that one film that needs to kind of break that mold right now that we're kind of in a little bit of a slump with MCU movies.
What I will also say about the whole box office argument is that also, again, and it goes back to the earlier point of tempering the expectations that we have as people about what a good box office looks like versus what a bad one looks like, because I think people have lost sight completely about what that is. A movie can make double of what it was made for, and people are still like, flop, sucked, oops. That's a bomb for whatever studio, in this case, Marvel. But let's also remember that part of what was making the MCU at that time continually pop off with movie after movie after movie was the buildup that they were doing from Phase 3 to Avengers and then Endgame, and then the little bit of the high that it rode after that. But then again, you look at all the other movies that made a lot of money at the box office. Spider-Man No Way Home, culmination of 3 Spider-Man films, or franchises, better said. Deadpool and Wolverine, the return of Hugh Jackman, seeing Deadpool, a fan's dream come true. Like, those are very different things than saying like, oh, well, since Thunderbolts, the first time that we saw this team up didn't make as much, then Thunderbolts is a bad movie. No, it's again, we have to go from that expectation. That doesn't mean it's a flop, but again, most other studios are not going to look at that kind of money and be like, nah, that sucked. Yeah. That's only genuinely, I feel like only something that exists within the superhero world.
Because it gets compared to Infinity War and Endgame too much. I remembered my point from earlier that I was going to bring up also. Was about how it kind of had to do with the box office and people just like, there's a lot of movies coming out nowadays too, and a lot of the comments that we were getting, like, Hero or Lou mentioned earlier, on one of our videos was pretty much about them saying how people can't really afford to go to the movies. And it makes sense because that's a very big thing to consider with the economy, and just there's a lot of freaking movies to pick and choose from nowadays. Like if I had a family of like 4 or 5 and I had to go see Sinners and then Thunderbolts and then Fantastic Four and then Superman and then Jurassic World, Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible, that's like $700 right there. I'd be
Yeah.
picking and choosing between what I'm seeing in theaters, and I can't.
Yeah.
And even myself as an individual right now, like I really want to go see Mission Impossible, but I don't really have the time and like extra hours or dollars to really go out and see it. So I'll probably wait till it's on streaming. But
And that's the other big key to that puzzle, where again, to your point, it's expensive to go. I mean, I look at myself, a family of 2, and it's $40 a movie on matinee. That's
I get
expensive.
lucky if I have to get my friends to pay me back for these tickets.
Yeah, it's expensive to go. And then again, I think rarely get to hear the streaming numbers and how studios and really, studios view their streaming numbers. Again, Captain America Brave New World came out today on Disney Plus. If it crushes it on streaming, which it probably will, I don't see why it wouldn't. What does that mean for that movie? How do the studio heads view that? We don't know as fans. We can only assume. But that does put into play where, okay, maybe it didn't make as much box office, but what did it do streaming wise? They look at that.
Yeah, I mean, they look at it, and we can do a separate video on like the whole thing of like investors, subscriber count, what's bringing people in, all that kind of good stuff. But I do think that's another reason why I am hopeful for the MCU moving forward, is there are going to be films that are going to hit. Brave New World is hitting now. Thunderbolts is going to hit in probably a month or two. And then we get a couple of good animated shows that we referenced in the beginning with Eyes of Wakanda and Marvel Zombies. And who knows what else is going to be on there. I mean, Fantastic Four is probably going to be on Disney Plus by what, year's end?
Probably November.
That's 3 really good movies. That's 3 really good movies that you could probably consume over holiday. So come 2026 for Brand New Day, I think there's going to be some really good momentum for the MCU, and people are still going to see these things. And that's my biggest point about this. It's not like these things have no visibility. Go on any of these platforms. They're trending. People are still talking about them. And the people who are like, no one's talked about it, I haven't seen anyone. I'm like, my G, you're talking about it right now today. You're the one participating in this conversation, talking about that project that you say doesn't exist anymore. Now, is it your TikToker's top thing? No, that's a separate thing. There's a game to be played from that perspective, but it doesn't mean that people forgot about it, because you can talk to people in your circles, your friend group, go online, jump on here with the Point 3 podcast. We'll talk about it, and things evolve and change. Something as simple as a random Thursday announcement. Hey, Doomsday is pushed 6-7 months. That changes the game. Now you got to look at projects a little bit differently. So it's still on time. Still on time. I think it's cool.
Always.
Every Wednesday. Stream sniping you.
Yeah, right at 10. Right at 10 o'clock. He'll always will show up.
Yeah. But I want to throw one last thing out here for you guys. And we appreciate everyone in the chat. If you haven't subscribed, again, definitely do so. Love the input. Love to respond. Join us every Wednesday. We're doing this. But one last thing that I want to talk about of why we should be hopeful for the MCU is when we look on the other side of the fence, and that's with the DCU. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I know SB knows that. He's got some friends, knows about it. Hero, obviously, wrestling fan. When there's competition, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I think right now, there could not be a better time than to have the MCU have to compete with the DCU. Again, the Spider-Man brand new. There are people who have admitted, I don't know if I can afford 2 movies in 1 month. I have to choose. Do I go see Superman or do I go see Fantastic Four? One thing that they're going to do is going to put an influx of FOMO into the superhero live action world. If you go see one and you like it, and somebody else is like, oh, you didn't see Superman? You're going to be like, what am I missing? Or you saw Superman, you didn't see Fantastic Four, and you're like, oh, yeah, I saw it too, it was good, but did you see that? These are going to be new conversations that we haven't had in a very, very long time. And again, for people like, well, the DCEU just ended a couple of years ago. Nah. After the Justice League, it was kind of done. MCU knocked them out. But we're getting back to that point. So, gents, how is that a good thing for the MCU in your eyes?
They gotta step their quality up. Because I'm gonna bring my freaking analogy off, even though I can't use it for Doomsday anymore. I'm sad, but just think DCU's already in a freaking great production mindset ahead of Marvel right now, with Supergirl coming out next year and being done with filming already. Superman finished last July, and it's been sitting in post and cooking in post ever since. A whole year. Fantastic Four, who knows if they're still even done filming? No, I think they are done filming that. But that started filming within a year of its release date, and the whole reason why they pretty much pushed Doomsday back was because that started filming within a year of its initial release date. So I can't use my nickel analogy anymore for however many times Marvel started and finished a movie within the same year. I'd have two nickels because it's just Doomsday screwed it up. But Fantastic Four, they started that shit like the day after SDCC 2024, and it's coming out exactly a year later. So that has some concerns with it, like compared to James Gunn pretty much saying that he's not greenlighting anything unless it has a good script. So
Yeah.
I think that just shows the quality that DC's approaching, that they want all of their stuff to be pristine to be able to compete with Marvel in the first place. And once us fans get to really see like not maybe quality differences, or once we get to see both, it'll be a great, interesting time. Especially as I've been reading Fantastic Four and Superman comics like at the same time right now. Or like Century, when I was on the Century run versus Superman run, I got to kind of compare myself like Marvel versus DC comics a little bit. So that was cool. And see like certain comparisons there. So when we get to see it in the movies again, I'm excited. Super hyped for that.
Yeah.
I wish they were coming out the same weekend, I can't lie. For like Superman Fantastic Four. I would love like a Barbenheimer Super Fantastic weekend. That would be insane. Like literally insane.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. There will be a world where that happens. But Ken, I think you bring up a really good point, and I'm sure you have a thought on this as well. But Ken, I think you bring up a really good point about people not caring about DC, especially recent films. Joker 2, I gotta say, Joker 1 was a huge hit, and people are anticipating Joker 2. Aquaman 1 was a huge smash. Aquaman 2 came at a weird time. Blue Beetle was a huge representative movie for a lot of people who finally got equality from a superhero perspective, and that was a huge win. Shazam 1, smash. The Flash was supposed to be a smash. Black Adam probably could have been a smash, but it got better reviews than people are thinking. So it's like, when you look at all of these things, obviously there are trends that are happening here, but kind of just putting this all encompassing, it's going to take a movie. There's a real world where Superman doesn't hit 500 million, but it could be a really good movie. The thing is you have to keep on the schedule and keep putting these things out. And if the quality is what each of these studios are saying that they're going to deliver on, it's going to become undeniable. So the narrative's going to flip. Because how can you say, then you just flat out don't like superhero movies at that point. If you're going to be like, these movies are no good, but they're making money and they have really good box office reviews, at some point you got to look across the table at that person who's saying those things and say, do you like superhero films? Because if you don't, then this is kind of a non-factor, because there are starting to be a lot more people who do, and this is getting a lot louder again in here, because both MCU and DCEU at one point, DC films in general, Batman, you can look through the top superhero movies and it's littered with movies that are 750 million plus that will look like dog doo compared to what they're going to be putting out in the next 3 to 4 years, probably.
Yeah. And I mean, also when it came down to those movies that Kevin listed out, DC didn't give them a reason to care. That's the problem with a lot of those, is that very little marketing. You look at Aquaman 2, just kind of came out. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, same thing. The Flash had the most, probably, but ended up being what it was. Black Adam, mainly marketed through The Rock, and not even as a film, but just through The Rock. And then Joker, Folie à Deux, bro,
All of
a lot
those
of
were
people.
in their transition period too, from like just movies that were
We
made
know
that they
that's
just had to
done.
get rid of.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
yeah.
Especially Black Adam. That was supposed to be like the revival of the DCEU.
Exactly.
And then opening weekend came and people were like, no.
Yeah. So DC
Dr.
didn't
Fate,
give
though.
them.
Great Dr. Fate.
Yeah, great Dr. Fate.
Oh, this is a good movie. I'm sorry.
It's pretty decent. But yeah, they didn't give them that reason to go view it. Like Aquaman 2, literally, I wanted to be excited, but to this day, I still have not seen it. And I dare say that Mufasa had a lot more marketing
Sonic 3 is still
than
better.
any of those movies. So it's just hard to sit there and say that people don't care about DC. They do. There's a very loud fan base that does care about DC, us included, that we want to see them succeed. And you go look at trailer numbers, since a lot of people are, and not nobody here, but a lot of people place a lot of importance on trailer view numbers. You look at the trailer views for Superman, the numbers that it's doing within under 24 hours, it's crushing a lot of these other movies. And people are genuinely talking about Superman. Like, people on the streets are talking about Superman. I see Superman toys every day that, or every time I go to the grocery store, there's something Superman related. I think people are getting excited. All that to say, though, this just shows Marvel that they now have to continue to step up.
Yes.
The same level that DC is putting into their marketing, they have to put. Yeah. And I think, for as much as I hate it, as much as I hate admitting this, they started it with the stupid chairs, because they know that people are going to talk about it. As sucky as it is, it got people talking.
Like all day too, because they're like, "Oh, what's next? Day. Another chair."
Yeah, and they're gonna. I do feel.
I was so happy. I was so busy that day to not freaking keep up with it.
Yeah, and I feel like they'll keep that momentum going, where they're gonna see what Superman did and see the results that it yielded for them, and they're going to try to one up DC. And again, that's a good thing.
They tried by dropping that freaking Fantastic Four trailer day before Superman Day.
Yeah.
And then a month later, when the Superman trailer came out, freaking did what Fantastic Four trailer did in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Shots fired. Love the competition.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Iron sharpens iron. That's the best way to put it. Is we can get into a world where, they can do something unprecedented that the MCU and DCEU didn't get a chance to really do. They never got a chance to really share the same ring for the most part, and they weren't hitting stride in the same way at the same time. There's a very real chance that we do get that. Although we're going to get Avengers movies before we get Justice League movies and those types of things, the world that they're building and promising and showing us, that's the big thing. We're going to get competing worlds that feel bigger. They're going to be more inclusive. There's going to be more characters. There's going to be more to look forward to, speculate, talk about. Again, we can spend 45 minutes just talking about why we should be hopeful about the MCU. It's really hard to sit here and be like, it's not really interesting. It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting.
And just look at the fact that around the last time that they had this same kind of competition was at 2013 to 2016. 17 phase, between like everything that Zack Snyder was doing and like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and that. and you see how well DC did, and you see how well Marvel did, they both benefited because both knew that they, certain ways, whether you still believe it or not, had to bring their A game. But at the time, Batman versus Superman was their A game.
Yeah.
Justice League was their A game.
Yeah.
You know, we look back at it, but it was their A game.
Yeah.
And we see what Marvel did. And there's no way that Marvel isn't going to see that. They got lazy because they just had years of nobody contesting them.
Yeah.
And now they have competition again.
In the meantime, it's a very, very good thing. SP, can you pull up Batman vs Superman box office?
Oh, gladly.
Super quick, because I think here it's at that point for people to look back and they're like, that's one of the worst DCEU movies. It's one of the worst decisions. Like in hindsight, you're like, it's the worst, blah, 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 blah. Yet we look at box office and you got to attest it to these movies came out at really and set the tone for what people called the golden age of superhero movies from about 2017 to 2019.
874.
874.
Man, I was waiting for the cue.
Chat beat it. Chat beat you to it. Blame Nate.
Yeah, blame Nate. Oh, boo, Nate.
Oh wait, I didn't. Yeah, damn. Okay. I thought that was you, Hero, that said that.
No.
And I wasn't looking at the chat. But fun fact, I have a really fun fact about this. I remember someone criticized a Twitter post and was like, "Oh, Batman vs Superman did like 874. Like James Gunn has never had a movie beat anything Snyder did." And his closest movie was Guardians of the Galaxy 1 with like 860 million, if I remember correctly. So if you're telling me a Guardians of the Galaxy 1 movie that has B-list characters that nobody cared about at the time can make $14 million less than a Batman vs. Superman, it's a little scary to think about. Just saying.
Yeah.
It is. No, it is. And Sanju, people are just tired of superhero stories. They're not. Again, go watch a video that we've done many times before talking about superhero fatigue and how it's just not a real thing. To your point, what people want is good cinema. You're absolutely right. And superhero films can and have proven to be good cinema at their best.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to look up one other thing too.
But no, to that point, while you look that up, Civil War's box office was what, $1 billion? Again, that was a 2016 movie. I think Doctor Strange came out same year. And I know that it had a little bit less, but 677 mil for a establishing like origin film that came out in I think November, which back then was like a very dead time for films. I mean, like,
wait, what movie?
Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I love Doctor Strange. That was my first Marvel movie I worked through at a movie theater.
Oh, some SB lore. But
yeah, I have the poster for it right above my bed.
There you go.
Real quick to that point. The tired of superhero stories. It's hard, and this kind of goes back to the conversation we'll be looking at of like, again, this is why I'm hopeful for superhero stories moving forward. When you talk about Lilo and Stitch, Sinners, and Thunderbolts, all are in the 90% Rotten Tomato range from audience. Lilo and Stitch actually has the worst rating from critics. Again, I'm not saying Rotten Tomatoes is the end all be all, but when we look at these things, like, it's not like these are getting like Madam Web flops and those types of things. These are stories that are getting 80s and 90%. Again, Sanjay, to your point, I don't think people are sick of the stories. I think people want something that they got a taste of back in 2019 and 2018. And they're like, we want to see that again every time, which is what we talked about. You might have joined a little bit later, but it just comes around to expectations. There are no expectations for Sinners. What expectations do you have for Sinners? Nothing. You have high expectations because Ryan Coogler, who, by the way, really got his name put on the map was because of a superhero story. You got him with his title, Michael B. Jordan. His arguably one of his best roles and most iconic roles are Killmonger, superhero. Lilo and Stitch is a part of Disney. Disney is Marvel Studios. You know what I mean? Like, It's hard to say people are sick of those. If you, Sanju, are specifically not for superhero stories, for sure, I will say I think that there's a world where people are kind of missing out on some of these really strong stories and character-driven narratives that are being put out there, like a Thunderbolts, and probably a Fantastic Four and some of the Disney Plus shows. It's just they're not making billions, and because it's a superhero film, I think you see a lot of film students talk about this. It should make $1 billion. It's not as easy. It's the LeBron conversation. He didn't win MVP. He's washed. No, he had the best season. He just didn't have a season better than the year he won the MVP. So is he worse? Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, going back to something we talked about a good couple weeks ago, if you're a comic book fan, comic book movie fan, this is the time to be one because things are ramping back up. So definitely enjoy them. There's reasons to be very optimistic for the MCU. The MCU has a lot going on. The DCU as well. We're going to talk about that another day, though, as Superman gets closer. But let us know if you in the comments if you either watch this after the fact, after the live, or during. What are you most excited for in terms of the Marvel? Because again, there is so much to be excited about, and we wanted to talk about it because. And again, honestly, when it comes down to, like we say, most of the time, we could sit here and talk another 4 to 5 hours about this stuff. We just have to find a way to cut the conversation at some point. So
Discord.
Yeah, join the Discord if you want to talk about it more, because we most definitely will. But everybody, thank you so much for joining. For those of you that did, if it's your first time, welcome. If it's your second, third time, welcome back. We always appreciate you guys. But make sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube and follow us wherever you listen to your major podcasts. And we will catch you on the next live stream Wednesday. We have been your favorite trio of hosts, Spider Brando, Lou, and myself, Hero Scroll. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a great night.